Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, bringing you guys another Market Watch episode. So we are in kind of that calm before the storm, right? Because I think that everyone is excited to see what Konami is going to be doing with the upcoming ban list before they decide what meta decks they want to play and invest in. So for now, we are still seeing a bit of movement, but rather than being with meta cards, it's more related to some lower tier strategies. Now, most notably, it's because of some hype surrounding Ice Barriers, which just got a brand new structure deck released this past weekend, and it does allow the deck to do a lot of really interesting things. So yeah, today's Market Watch is going to be a little bit shorter than usual. I don't want to drag out these conversations for any longer than is necessary, but let's jump right into it. So first up, let's talk about some cards that have shot up in price directly as a result of the Ice Barrier structure deck, and I guess the most obvious one to talk about here is Geomancer. So when you read this card, it's kind of a random effect, but really the only thing you care about is the fact that it is a water tuner monster that has an activated effect, which allows you to discard a water monster as cost. So this card was an important combo piece, featured in Team Samurai X1's Ice Barrier deck profile, and it is a card that you summon off of Revealer. Now in Sam's combo, he discarded a Dragoons with Revealer to summon Geomancer, then searched Neptibus off of the Dragoons, then you pitch the Neptibus for Geomancer to summon back the Dragoons, then overlay the Dragoons and Revealer for Bahamut Shark, which is a really cool line of play. Anyways, it just so happens that Geomancer is an Ice Barrier card that wasn't reprinted in the Ice Barrier structure deck, because who would have guessed that a card whose effect just prevents it from being attacked by monsters of a single declared attribute would be such an important combo piece. Now because of this, we have seen Geomancer's two relatively old printings shoot way up in price, with the DT copies running $25 each and the super rares at about $13 a piece. So if you happen to be sitting on this card in your bulk, then congratulations, now is a great time for you to offload them while the prices are still high. If you're looking to build Ice Barriers, this card is just a one of, so hopefully you can get lucky and find one or get one from a friend. Either way, I am expecting the hype for this card to die down fairly quickly, because Ice Barriers probably aren't going to be a meta relevant deck at all. It could definitely be an OTS super rare or common, so offload your copies while they're high if you can. If you really need one to play with, definitely consider waiting for the hype to die down over the next couple of weeks so that you don't have to pay such a high inflated price. Next up is another pretty interesting card. We have Crystron Citry. So this is another card that was featured in Sam's Ice Barrier deck profile. This is a card that you can summon off of Halqifibrax. So interestingly enough, Halqifibrax only negates the effect of the monster that it summons out while that monster is on the field for that turn. So you can actually wait until your opponent's turn, then use this card's effect then. It allows you to summon a non-tuner monster from your graveyard, then conduct a synchro summon during your opponent's turn. Now it does take a few more steps, but eventually this leads to allowing you to bring out a level 9 synchro monster during your opponent's turn for some disruption, which is kind of cool. Now this card actually only has one ultra rare printing available from Invasion Vengeance, as it wasn't reprinted in the Megatins from that year, and as a result, we are seeing it at about $15 a piece. This card is really similar to Geomancer, right? In that it has limited printings and is quite expensive, but it's also just a one of in the deck. I also think it's similar in that it is hyped up and inflated right now, but also could see a reprint. Either way, this is a card that I'm looking to offload your extra copies of at their current inflated price before the hype for Ice Barriers dies back down. Now, speaking of Crystrons and level 9 synchro monsters, Crystron Quarion Gandrax is a level 9 synchro monster that has shot up in price. So a little while ago, we did talk about Crystron Phoenix when it was only $1 or $2, and I mentioned that it was something that might potentially see play in Ice Barriers, so it might have been worth picking up. Well, that card has shot up from being $1 or $2 to now being $13 a piece. And an interesting card that has gone up in price alongside it is Quarion Gandrax, a level 9 synchro monster that requires 2 tuners to make. Now this card is an interesting option for the Ice Barrier deck as well against combo decks, since it effectively means that you'll be able to banish 3 monsters from your opponent's field and or graveyard when you summon it during your opponent's turn. Now I don't think that this is a card that you're going to be going into every single game, right? Because it does require a little bit of work to make. It's not the easiest thing to bring out, but it's definitely an interesting option that I feel like you would want to have access to if you're playing the Ice Barrier deck. Now, once again, this is a card that just has one printing, this time being from Raging Tempest, and we're seeing it all the way up at $19 each, which is kind of insane. I do remember pulling this card back in the day and being upset that it wasn't a copy of Tiger Mortar, but yeah, same story as Geomancer and Citry, right? Something that you're going to want to offload at its current hyped up price fairly soon while you can, just in case it does get that reprint, and it's probably going to cool off in terms of price within the next couple of weeks. Next up, let's take a look at Atlantean Dragoons. So Dragoons is a pretty interesting case. Not only is it going up because of ice barriers, but we also have the Ursarctic archetype coming up in Ancient Guardians, and apparently that is a deck that runs Dragoons alongside cards like Deep Sea Diva and Neptibus as well. Now obviously Dragoons is a really important search card for these strategies, allowing you to search for any sea serpent when it is sent to the graveyard as cost to activate a water monster's effect. Now, interestingly enough, this card actually just received a common reprint in OTS Tournament Pack 14. However, we've actually seen all versions of it still shoot up in price. The ultimate rares are obviously still expensive at $100 a piece, but the super rares are now up at $14 a piece on TCG Player, and the commons are a whole $5 each. That's pretty crazy when you consider how recently OTS Tournament Pack 14 actually came out, because usually, even if we do see an OTS common spike up, it's usually something that's at least a year old or so. It's definitely possible that with the lockdowns and people not being able to get out to their locals, maybe people are struggling a little bit more to find their copies of Dragoons, but it's interesting nevertheless. Now, this card is a little bit different from the other cards we've talked about previously. It's still really only going to see play in these rogue strategies, and it does have multiple printings, but it is a 3 of rather than a 1 of, so there will probably still be a fair amount of demand for this card. Hopefully you guys happen to have these still lying around from when you were hunting those Alti Nibirus, because they are worth a few bucks now. Now, it is possible that we'll see it reprinted in Ancient Guardians or another set sometime closer to the release of the Ursarctic, but this reprint was really recent, so I definitely wouldn't count on that. If you do need to pick this card up, I would actually consider waiting for a month or two, right? So it's after the Ice Barrier deck, but well before the release of Ancient Guardians, where the hype will have hopefully died down, and you should be able to pick these up for maybe $1 or $2. Alright, now the next card I want to talk about here is Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. So ever since Mermaid got banned, this card hasn't really seen very much usage. I think it does pop up every now and then as an interesting tech option in different cyber strategies, but we haven't really seen any of those become meta outside of like Salamangreat. However, we basically have confirmed already that on the next ban list we will be seeing Firewall Dragon unbanned, given that it is receiving an errata in Ghosts from the Past where it can only summon Cyberse monsters. Because of this, I think that people are speculating that some sort of Cyberse deck is going to be good or meta relevant, though I don't know what that's going to be, if it's like Math Mechs or Code Talkers or whatnot. However, Nightmare Corruptor Ibli could be a really interesting tech, especially against Virtual Worlds. Remember, Virtual World doesn't play any Link monsters at all, so putting Ibli onto their side of the field effectively prevents them from playing the game at all if they don't have a way to get rid of it themselves. Anyways, this card has bumped up a little bit in price with the anticipated unbanning of Firewall Dragon. The original secret rares have gone from being $4 or $5 to now being $9 a piece, and the reprint ultra rares have gone from being $1 or $2 to now being $3. Now, I definitely wouldn't go out and invest in a ton of copies of this card because I typically think it is just a 1 of. However, I think that if you are able to pick up the secret rare copies for $5 or $6 or the ultras for around $1, especially if you can do so with trades, they make great cards for you to try and pick up to even out certain trades because they do have a decent amount of potential upside, just in case they become useful in some sort of meta strategy once again. Next up, I want to briefly talk about Pot of Extravagance. So we all know what Pot of Extravagance is, allowing you to banish 6 random cards from your extra deck in order to draw 2 cards, but then preventing you from drawing cards for the rest of the turn. It was once one of the most typed up cards in the game, where original secret rare printings were almost $100 each. However, the card has received 2 reprints, an ultra rare reprint in Toon Chaos, and then another secret rare printing in the 2020 Megatons. Now, as a result, for a little while, it looked like you could pick this card up for fairly cheap, and it was going to stay down there, right? You could grab it for under $20, typically about $50 for the set. However, that was in a much more combo-heavy format, which featured decks such as Infer Noble Knights and Dragon Link. Now, however, we are in a much more balanced format, and control decks like Subterror and Altergeist have a bit better of a chance now than they did before. As a result, we're actually seeing the price of Extravagance trending upwards, as you are now looking at having to pay $25 a piece for either the ultra rare or secret rare reprint. This isn't a huge price bump up, right? But I think it could definitely be a signal that the card is going to continue increasing in price as long as we don't see the card reprinted again, and we continue to be in this more of a balanced format like the one we're currently in. If you've been putting off looking at sets of Pot of Extravagance or picking up your copies, I would definitely consider keeping an eye on the card, at least for now. We should be seeing what type of cards get reprinted in Ghosts from the Past fairly soon, which is looking to be like the main reprint set that we'll be getting this spring. And if it does dodge that reprint, consider picking up a few extra copies for yourself, because I do believe there is a solid chance that the card will continue its upward trend. The final card I'm going to talk about here today is Chamber Dragonimaid, which isn't so much of a rogue card now, even though it kind of feels like it would be. So the Dragonimaid package I think is a pretty important engine in Dragon Link, and if I were playing the deck, it's one of the engines that I would choose to be running. Not only can it give you access to Romulus all on its own if you search Hospitality with it, but also if you already have the Hospitality in hand or you've already gone through it, you can search for Tidying as well, which is another form of disruption for the deck. It's also really cool because you can summon this card off of the Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres and trigger its effect during your opponent's turn to get the additional brick out of your deck before you draw. Now, of course, it is also a Dragonimaid card, and we saw all of the other Dragonimaid made form monsters get reprinted in maximum gold, so there are undoubtedly also people wanting to complete their Dragonimaid decks with the help of their stimulus checks contributing to the rising prices of this card. Anyways, this card is now a whopping $55 a piece with very few quantities available on the market, which is crazy because I remember when this card first came out, everyone just kind of assumed it was only going to be like a $10 to $12 card. Obviously, as something that is relatively new, it just has the one printing in Eternity code. There are limited quantities of it available on the market, so it is a bit slower to replenish and bring the price down. It should be reprinted in the 2021 Megatons, but that probably won't come out for at least another 6 months. If you have extra copies of this card, I would definitely consider offloading them while they are this high, though obviously with how crazy prices have been over the last year or so, who knows what to expect. I would think that this card is going to cool off a little bit over the next couple of weeks as people gradually list their copies back onto the market, though not by a ton because it does naturally have that waifu tax applied to it. Realistically, I could see this card falling back down to anywhere between $35 to $45. Alright guys, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. I know it's kind of crazy. Who would have thought that we'd be looking at Ice Barriers as a deck that is so heavily influencing the market in the year 2021? I guess that after the last year, anything really is possible. Hopefully soon we will have that ban list drop, and also we'll see some more reveals for Ghosts from the Past so that we can see some other crazy price changes and whatnot. Anyways, if you guys did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure that you hit that thumbs up button for me so you can let me know. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about the cards that we discussed in today's episode, and also let me know what else is trending on the market that I didn't cover, so I can hopefully cover it in a future video to keep all of you guys as informed as possible. Also, if you haven't already, do make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.